it's not your typical fund. So here I'm looking for literally the missing links to make the full cycle fully autonomous, fully truly unmanned, when a human being will not need to get involved at any stage.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 358. What do investors look for in the UAS industry? For that question, we turn to Vadim Tarasov, founding partner of Advanced Autonomous Solutions Fund, a fund investing in unmanned solutions globally. The fund believes that automation will play a key role in the transformation of the largest industries in the next 2 to 5 years, and only a handful of companies will serve as a backbone for such automation. One of those companies is UAVOS, which specializes in the design, development, and manufacturing of unmanned vehicles and autopilot systems, as well as components such as servo drives, pan-tilt platforms, and rescue and emergency landing systems. In addition to being a partner at Advanced Autonomous Solutions Fund, Vadim is also chairman of the board at UAVOS. He has more than 15 years' experience as a board member, investor, and executive leader with highly disruptive technology companies. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Vadim talks about Advanced Autonomous Solutions Fund, UAVOS, and he provides an investor's perspective into the UAV market and the future of autonomous operations. But before we hear from Vadim, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have a great story on the use of drones that you'd like to share in a podcast, contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. So let's find out why investors are interested in autonomous drone solutions with Vadim Tarasov of Advanced Autonomous Solutions Fund. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Vadim to introduce himself.
So I'm Vadim Tarasov, and I am a managing partner of Advanced Autonomous Solutions Fund, which invests in solutions in the area of autonomy, unmanned aircrafts, and in general, the ecosystem.
Vadim, what type of companies does the fund invest?
So basically, the fund focuses predominantly on drones and drone-related things. So currently, the main company is UAVOS, which is unmanned aircraft of all types, converted aircraft, USVs, UGVs, UAVs, and obviously all of the proprietary technologies inside those. Then the next one is Global Energy Transmission, which is in-flight wireless charging of electric drones, which is also a globally unique solution. Another company is UAV LAS, basically landing assistance systems, which allow the drone to land very precisely with the precision of under 5 centimeters. Sometimes not vertical landing, but let's say land under a certain angle in any conditions, with or without GPS, in any circumstances. UAVHE are hybrid engines for UAVs. And then a few companies here and there, like I've just invested in a company called Archel, which what it does is visual navigation for drones and obstacle avoidance. So things like this.
Let's focus first on UAVOS, which stands for UAV Operating Systems. What does the company do?
The company actually does full cycle from individual components, starting with a fully proprietary autopilot, which is, by the way, not based on any open source or some publicly available solution, but it's written from scratch. It's already the 10th generation of the autopilot, which has been created in-house. The first one was back in 2010. All the individual components, from servo drives to pitot tubes, GNSS modules, etc. and obviously up to the complete solutions such as unmanned helicopters, unmanned fixed wing systems, the very unique high altitude solar powered pseudo-satellites, which flies for several months without landing at altitude up to 20 kilometers in the air. So UAVOS provides a huge range of solutions, again, from components to converted aircrafts, converted meaning from manned to unmanned, and unmanned aircraft designed from scratch.
Going back to 2010, the company's been around for a long time.
Oh, yeah. And actually, let's say the funny stories and what helped the company to become what it is today is from the very beginning, they have been collaborating with a number of government-related customers in the Middle East, which allowed them to do, let's say, to experiment with unmanned aircrafts, which otherwise they would have been even allowed to test anywhere, right? So the company had a very good head start, so to say, because of these relationships.
Were you involved as an investor from the beginning?
Actually, I've joined the company and has been supporting it since 2016, when the company already has developed some really good solutions, but they were still, more operating as an R&D lab. And my main goal is to basically help them go into the, let's say, serial manufacturing of a lot of products, which we are there for the past 3 years already.
Where is the company based?
So the company has several different offices, and there is one in the US, Spain, Switzerland. Now we're setting up a Middle Eastern office, and there is also an office in Belarus, Minsk as well.
What industries does UAVOS serve?
The specific industry, we, let's say, develop solutions which cater to a lot of industries, starting from logistics to inspections of power lines, mapping solutions, etc. But obviously, we also work with the security and defense sector.
There are many companies that produce similar products. What makes UAVOS stand out among the rest?
Let me try to summarize it in maybe one sentence. First of all, the range of the solutions which UAVOS manufactures is not comparable to literally anybody else except from, the huge multinational concerns like Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or, other like really big multinational corporations. Plus, again, we have some unique solutions such as high altitude solar-powered pseudo-satellite. So even in the products, let's say, area, we are already, I would say, unique. But then going deeper, we manufacture all of our own components. So basically, we don't use any, standard off-the-shelf autopilots or servo drives and whatnot, right? So all of our components are fully compatible. So we don't really depend on anybody else when we build our solutions.
I want to learn more about the company's unmanned helicopter. What can it do?
First of all, even in terms of unmanned helicopters, we have also several different models, starting from a very small and compact electric helicopter with MTOW of 25 kilograms, which basically allows us to operate in the segment where we don't have to get too many permissions, and probably perfect for monitoring and mapping solutions and even for, let's say, small logistic related tasks. But then going higher from there in the range, we have a gas helicopter with MTOW of 117 kilograms, and then further with MTOW of more than 500 kilograms and the useful payload of 160. And now we're working on a new product, which likely will be released close to the end of the year with useful payload exceeding 1 ton. So it basically will bring us to a, let's say, completely different level. And I'd say will be one of, if not the only one of very few providers of such an unmanned solution. Obviously, the core application for this would be logistics.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant range. How are your customers typically using the helicopters?
For smaller ones, it's typically mapping, surveillance, security. So power line inspection, railroad inspection, forestry inspections, generation of digital maps, right? This is, so we're talking about, let's say, the lower end, flying with a camera with a gimbal, flying with a LiDAR, and similar, right? So this is, again, the lower MTOW helicopters, anything under, let's say 400 kilograms. From there on, the core usage would be logistics. So our UH-500 helicopter, which is based, let's say it's a converted CH-7, converted from manned to unmanned, and it's actually fully rehauled. So you won't really recognize the CH-7 in it when you see it. The main application is transportation of cargoes, something like, I don't know, anything from 50 up to 160 kilograms between cities or from a remote location, let's say to a central processing location when it comes to like oil and gas companies or mining companies. So that's probably the best use for the heavier ones.
What's the benefit of using a helicopter compared to a quadcopter or a fixed-wing design?
Helicopter allows you to do some other things that fixed-wing devices won't be able to, such as hover over a particular location and let's say do an in-depth study of it or whatever, filming, analysis and whatnot, right? So if you compare it to quadcopter, most definitely it's a lot more stable. It can resist much heavier winds, especially gust of winds, which for quadcopters or multicopters could be absolutely disastrous. And the next thing, especially for, heavy logistics applications, we typically do the conversion of a traditional helicopter into unmanned. And what it gives us, it combines the stability of a helicopter that has been, let's say, proven by hundreds of thousands of flight hour operations with our autopilot systems, which also have hundreds of thousands of flight hours. So we really combine two very stable, proven solutions, and thus we minimize any risks of any potential issues there. Whereas designing such a thing from scratch or doing a quadcopter, say you would need to fly this at least tens of thousands of hours before you can say, this is a really mature, stable system.
What's involved in converting an existing helicopter into an unmanned heavy lift system? Are you still using the same propulsion system, rotors, mechanics, and just adding software and other electronic components?
It's a bit more complex than that. We do leave the major systems intact, but it's not just, let's say, installing the software and electronics. We will also, let's say, have to install our servo drives and a few other components which make sure that the operation is always seamless. Like, for example, that helicopters like Robinson R-22, when they're like in the piloted version, there are a lot of accidents which happen after a certain maneuver that damages the tail and the crash happens. So in our unmanned version, this is literally impossible because our systems prevent this from happening. So we also install safeguards for any known issues which a certain design of aircraft may have.
Are the heavy lift helicopters in use today?
Oh, yes, quite extensively, actually. We have clients currently in 4 different countries which use this already, not even in trial mode, but in ongoing real-life situations. And again, we're talking about heavy lifting ones. The smaller ones have been in use with customers for the past, maybe 6 years.
And you say that soon there will be a heavy lift helicopter that can transport up to 1 ton.
Exactly. And the reason for this is we already have, let's say, a lineup of customers with very particular use cases which require such a weight. So we're talking about things starting from firefighting capacity to, let's say, intercity transportation.
Let's switch gears and talk about the Stratospheric Aircraft. It sounds fascinating. What does it do and why is it needed?
So basically, this is an aircraft, again, its main advantages, it can stay up in the air for several months without ever landing, and it's flying at an altitude of up to 20 kilometers. Obviously, during the day, it accumulates the energy from the sun and stores in the batteries on board. Then during the night, it releases gradually this energy, but it's sufficient to take it through the entire night and go into a charge cycle again. So the main applications for this is essentially connectivity and surveillance. So there are these two. That basically initially back in, 2014 or 2016, I think it was Facebook that tried to apply these for delivering internet to poorly connected locations. And that's actually still sort of the predominant use case for a number of players which are working on similar type of aircraft. So due to the NDA we have with a couple of partners in this, unfortunately cannot disclose too many details. But for us, this is also one of the major use cases. So this is the first, but also then, let's say, with a potential future partner, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we're also applying it to two more use cases. One is surveillance and monitoring both of the airspace and, let's say, of the region below the hubs. The next one is analysis of the air quality on different altitudes, different locations. Since hubs is constantly in the air, it can detect any changes in the air quality and is very helpful in monitoring a number of parameters which are, let's say, crucial for the environment.
How large is the aircraft? Is it something that a couple of people can carry?
It's quite a bit larger. So it's already, by the way, the second generation of this aircraft. The first generation we have up and running since 2017. It was a single wing aircraft, and it actually has a unique design. It has a flexible wing, unlike any of the competitors who are trying to build, let's say, a traditional design of the aircraft with a rigid wing, which in our view, and again, we may be mistaken, but in our view, it's not really the best idea because it introduces a lot of limitations on materials, on how rigid they should be and whatnot. So ours has a flexible wing, and the first generation hubs, the largest we built was 28 meters wingspan. Now we're already at the second generation of aircraft. We have one in operations which has two flexible wings, and the wingspan is 15 meters. We're now building the 30 plus meter, and the final, let's say, the large version, which will probably come in 18 to 24 months, would have a wingspan close to 60 meters.
Wow, that's pretty exciting stuff. I mean, all three products, very exciting technology. With your experience and investment background, how do you characterize the drone industry today?
So the industry, I think, today is already ready for, let's say, mass deployment. Now it's all about regulations. And the regulations have been, let's say, lagging behind substantially. And they're, let's say, an inhibitor to the industry development. So once the appropriate regulations are adopted by multiple countries in terms of certification of these aircraft, on all of the permits for beyond the visual line of sight flights and whatnot. And let's say these regulations are adopted and, let's say, in a reasonable way and with decent implementations, then the industry will explode. Because, I mean, actually, COVID was a really good booster for the industry. Because before, when you would mention to somebody, except, the government customers, that you'd be flying something like a heavy unmanned aircraft, typically everybody would freak out, right? So during COVID, people sort of started to assess things differently. They would be, okay, we can, instead of using pilots and whatnot, we can send this to pick up a heavy cargo, bring it back here, and all with using a remote operator. So that introduces a lot of different opportunities. So the industry is ready now. All we need are decent regulations because, again, today the industry is either unregulated in a lot of countries or overregulated, whereas you cannot fly any single drone. And again, there is a good reason for that as well, because of security issues and whatnot.
Are there countries that are on the right track, or at least seem to be developing the right regulations at the right pace?
That's a difficult one. You see, I mean, actually, even the US is, I think, on quite a good track lately in terms of introducing the right regulations, and hopefully in the next 2 to 5 years we'll hopefully see a very fast expansion of the industry. But again, the downside to UAVs is a potential security risk, because if somebody intercepts your UAV, or a lot of, let's say, really bad things can be done with it.
As an investor, what do you look for in companies in the UAS industry?
In terms of the ASF, so the fund investing in unmanned solutions, it's not your typical fund. So here I'm looking for literally the missing links, right? So, for example, UAVOS is a perfect base for this fund as a company which produces any type of UAV, and the quality is absolutely amazing. So the next thing is the wireless charging. What it allows you to make your small electric UAVs, the one you'll be able to use within the city limits, right? It will make their flight time endless. Their endurance would be perpetual as long as they're within the charging infrastructure. Then the landing assistance systems, UAV, LAS, it solves another very big issue, which is landing with ultra high precision, right? Because typically when you fly your DJI and if it lands half a meter here or half a meter there, nobody really cares, right? But once you start applying fully autonomous solutions at scale, right, massively, let's say a drone is supposed to deliver a package which weighs, I don't know, a couple of kilograms or in pounds, 5 pounds, right? And it drops it off even a foot off the target, right? And the package ends up falling on a child who is playing in the backyard, and it leads to injury or death, and that's game over, basically. So you see, each of the solutions I'm investing in, it solves a particular problem for the, let's say, full cycle, seamlessly integrated unmanned solution. And when I say the unmanned solution, their solution is supposed to be unmanned 100% in the end of the day. Because today, let's say you have a UAV which flies autonomously, but when it lands, it needs to be recharged, right? And that's, especially for the gas UAVs, it's a manual task. And wireless charging with global energy transmission, the same applied to electric helicopters. So now this part is solved. Precision landing, same thing. So now I'm looking for a few solutions, like, for example, a mailbox which would be fully compatible with a drone autonomous delivery and receipt. Things like this, the missing links to make the full cycle fully autonomous, fully, like, truly unmanned, when a human being will not need to get involved at any stage.
Where did your interest in unmanned systems come from? Were you involved in unmanned systems previously or in the military?
No, not really. So here's the thing. I've been doing investment in a lot of different companies, starting from e-commerce to advertising to social networking and whatnot, right? So sooner or later, you want to have a certain thesis that's one way or another unique or, let's say, unlike the rest of the world. And there you're looking at probably an industry which you will see is going to dominate the world in the next couple of decades, right? It needs to be something which is still in its early stages and which definitely will transform a number of industries. So robotics is one of these industries. And since I was lucky enough to find UAVOS as one of the first companies, they created just a perfect, base for the expansion and building on top of it and around it.
Let's talk about the future of UAVOS. What's next for the company?
There are several things which, let's say, probably will announce quite soon. So first of all, we're now in process of setting up a joint venture with a major player for precisely the hubs for the high altitudes to the satellite. And this will bring this particular solution on a totally new level. It's a major partner. And hopefully, if things go right within the next couple of months, we'll be able to announce this deal. So this is the sort of one of the major news for UAS. The next thing is, now that we have so many different platforms to deliver particular, let's say, solutions to a number of industries, we will be spinning out some solutions and partnering with industry partners, right? So to precisely focus on enabling specific use cases, which are major, like, I don't know, logistics, like agriculture and whatnot, right? So UAS will be spinning out companies that would be partnering with industrial players. And that's, I think, where the company is heading. And at the same time, obviously, we're investing a lot in R&D and always staying, let's say, on top of the game and always delivering the best-in-class solutions. Like, again, the one which I mentioned with 1 ton useful payload. And this is just one of a large number of solutions we're working on right now.
Is there anything that we missed that we should talk about?
This is still in, like, how they put it, still in research phase, but now I'm potentially looking to partner with a company in hydrogen engines for UAVs. And again, depending on how it goes and on how fast we're going to reach an agreement with one of the few companies we're discussing this with. It's quite likely that early next year you'll see some of our UAVs hydrogen powered.
So hydrogen is a viable energy source for unmanned systems.
Hydrogen has been around for quite some time, but it never so far reached sort of an industrial offtake because it's not only about the engines themselves, even though this part also is not super trivial, but it's also about the surrounding infrastructure. And it looks like we, again, potentially found the right partner for that as well. So again, fingers crossed.
For my last question, Vadim, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of the drone industry?
It's coming and it's unstoppable. 10 years down the road, the future is unmanned.
That's it for episode 358 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Vadim Tarasov of Advanced Autonomous Solutions Fund and UAVOS. I want to thank Vadim for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about UAVOS or Advanced Autonomous Solutions Fund, or want to connect with Vadim, check out the websites at uavos.com or aas.fun. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Gores.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.